Okay, we have just a slight change from our agenda today. Our speaker from Staples could not be with us, but that means that we have more time for Sudhir Hala, who's SVP of Retail at Uggam, to talk about opt out of the pricing rut and let content drive markets. Please welcome our next speaker.
Good afternoon. I know, it's late in the afternoon. You guys have just had some good lunch. And I have only 50 slides to go with 10 bullet points each. And to try and cover that in the next 30 minutes. Let me start with an icebreaker. What do you think is common between these three products? The first one is called Pupuri. For those of you who know what this product does, good for you. For those of you who don't, you'll be illuminated in a minute. The second one is called the LG Bluetooth headset. It's the headset I'm wearing. And the third one is the Vitamix Blender 750. Any guesses as to what's common across these three products? Our clients in the room can't answer, but everybody else. I've got a free bottle of Pupuri for whoever finds the right answer. So let me introduce you to the first product. This is Pupuri.
Oops. The mother load I just dropped. And that's how I like to keep it, leaving not a trace that I was ever here, let alone that I just birthed a creamy behemoth from my cavernous bowels.
Nothing is worse than stinking up the shared toilet at work, or the toilet at a party, or your lover's apartment.
Of course, flushing removes the graphic evidence. Maybe 2 or 3 flushes if your skid marks are as tenacious as mine. But what can be done of that subtle scent of a
300-cow dairy farm? Aerosol air fresheners aren't the most effective option, or the healthiest. Trying to mask the stench, giving you a nice blend of ChemLab carnations with just a touch of feces. So, how do you make the world believe your poop doesn't stink? Or in fact that you never poop at all? Poopery. Poopery is the before-you-go toilet spray that is proven to trap those embarrassing odours at the source and save relationships.
Simply spritz Poopery in the bowl to create a film on the water's surface that actually traps the odours in their porcelain prison. And when your little astronauts splash down and make contact with the film, they release Poopery's pleasant aromas, so all those around you can smell as a refreshing bouquet of essential oils. Yes, it is a real product. And yes, it really works. We've sold over 4 million bottles. On Amazon alone, there are over 1,000 reviews rating it 4.8 of 5 stars. That's a better Amazon rating than the iPhone 5. If it doesn't completely stop your stench from spreading, send it back for a full refund. Our unconditional stink-free guarantee. If your poo stinks, click here to get your Poopery today at poopery.com. So whether you need to pinch a loaf at work, cut a rope at a party, or lay a brick at your boyfriend's, your days of embarrassing smells or prairie dogging it are over. Poopery. Our business is to make it smell like your business.
Okay, good afternoon. Did I wake you guys up? So my name is Sudhir Hala. I head the retail practice for Uggam. We are a managed analytics company which provide data and analytics services to retail and CPG firms. Now, coming back to the product, what consumer need do you think it was serving? And how do you think the product will do in the holiday season? Now, if you look at the reviews for this particular product, you look at the search signals on this particular product, it's shown an amazing trend. This product has actually got introduced in 2012. So for a year, it did about okay. But from 2013 onwards, the product has shown an increasing trend, both in terms of reviews and the amount of searches on this product on Google. Now, the question is this going to be a sustained trend or not? And that, again, you can make out using the demand signals. Here is the second product. Okay. The one on the left is the LG Bluetooth headset. That's the one that I'm wearing. It's priced at $69.99. The second product there is the Plantronic M50. It's priced at $39. Which of these products do you think is going to do well? Now, if you look at the trends on this particular product, both of them are going to do well. But for the holiday season, my bet would be on the LG Bluetooth headset doing significantly better than the Plantronics M50. Now, if you look at the first trend, which is the reviews and the rate of increase of reviews. So, for a period there between 2012 and 2013, the Plantronics M50 did reasonably well. But since then, the LG Bluetooth set has really taken off. If you look at the search trend in Google, again, the LG Bluetooth headset beats the Plantronics M50 by a significant margin. Now, what's interesting about this product, though, is that while this was introduced in 2011, for a period of 3 years, the only retailers, or the only significant retailers selling it were Amazon and eBay. For the brick-and-mortar retailers to catch on to the fact that this product is doing well, or there is a certain trend associated with why this product is doing well, it took them close to around 3 years. So 2013 was when Best Buy first started introducing this product into their assortment. Now, why is that? Now, a lot of the retailers, the brick-and-mortar retailers, typically depend on their demand signals from what the manufacturers or the suppliers are telling them, or based on what NPD or a Nielsen is telling them. They're not getting it directly from the consumers. I hear voices. I know, sounds creepy. I don't yet see dead people. I do see a few sleepy ones, but the point that I'm trying to make here is that the opportunity for retailers is this. Because of the explosion of social data, reviews, and the availability of keyword search data, and digital footprints that consumers leave behind as they interact with you on your website, in the store, they're telling us information. They're telling us what they like, they're telling us what they don't like, they're telling us why they like it, and they're also telling us how much they're willing to pay. The opportunity for retailers is to listen directly to the consumers and not to the suppliers or just to the NPD Nielsen data, is to listen directly to what the consumers are telling them. Let's look at what these voices tell me for what's happening in the Bluetooth headset category. The style behind the head. So if you look at the last couple of years, that particular attribute is doing really well. Now, before I get into that, so every product is made up of attributes, right? So it's got a brand, it's got attributes in terms of whether it's noise cancellation, features, and so on and so forth. Now, when you marry the demand signals associated with the product, now when I say demand signals, I'm including reviews, I'm including search, I'm including social likes, I'm including backlinks. When I take those demand signals into account and marry that up with the attributes of a particular product, it tells me a story. It sings a song. And the song in this case is that these two features, if you see, the style behind the head and the fact that it's a stereo headset, have done significantly well in the last couple of years. Now, it's really very logical when you think about it, right? So smartphones, so people want headsets which can be used for both music and for calls. They want a headset that can be worn that doesn't get uncomfortable when you have it on the ear. And so when you think about it, it's logical. And when you put all the data together, and this is free democratic data, mind you, it's reviews and search signals and backlinks. When you put all those data points together, it tells a story. We all hear voices. Not everybody is listening, though. So again, going back to the point that I made earlier, consumers are freely and constantly telling us what they like, what they don't like. The opportunity for us is to listen to the consumers and not necessarily rely on demand signals that are coming from suppliers. Now, the presentation was about getting out of the pricing rut and getting into content. So what does all this have to do with content and price? Right? Now, fundamentally, retail is about leveraging assets. Right? So your brick-and-mortar store is an asset, your category page is an asset, your product page is an asset. Now, why does an asset exist in case of a retail scenario? It exists to get you traffic and to get you conversion. Right? So these are the two fundamental reasons why an asset exists, to get you traffic and to get you conversion. Now, when you Look at price and promotions. It's a significant parameter that impacts conversion. It impacts traffic also, but it impacts conversion significantly. But what happens when you simply rely on that particular parameter to take your decisions? So as you can see, and this is an actual product, typically most retailers, when a product is introduced, start off at different price points. And we at Ugam have provided retailers with services and data around matching competitor prices, and you'll see that eventually they all converge. They're all copying each other. So what's the differentiation here? How do you differentiate yourself? Now let's look at some of the other parameters. Backlinks and referrals in case of online, location in case of brick and mortar, they play a significant role too in terms of getting you traffic, right? Not conversion, traffic. Product page content or the equivalent of a store experience in case of a brick and mortar retailer has a significant impact as well. So the better the store experience, you get more traffic. You better the search engine optimization on the page, you get better traffic. If you look at reviews and social media, they have an influence as well. They have an influence on traffic and they have an influence on correlation. Now these values here represent the correlation between traffic and conversion with these various parameters. And it's taken across a set of categories. The actual correlation parameter does change from category to category. So for example, in case of electronics, you'll find that the correlation between price, promotion, and conversion is higher than it's in the other categories. So if you look at a continuum of categories with electronics on one hand and fashion on the other, the play between content and price, or the correlation, changes. So now, if you look at reviews as an indicator here, it's got a log-log relationship with conversion. Now, what I mean by log-log is that it's got a diminishing rate of return. The first few reviews count significantly more than the later reviews that come in. Your product page content, store experience has a significant impact as well. Social media, not so much. And what I mean by social media here, it's meaning the social likes associated with the product or the number of pins. But we're also seeing an increasingly rising significance of social media, but it's not anywhere close to as much as it's about reviews. Let's take a look at another example. So this is the Vitamix 750 blender. Okay, so it's the same product. The left-hand side product and the right-hand side product are the same. They're offered by two different retailers, though. So the first one, retailer number 1, has it priced at $649.99. It's a map price control product. Retailer number 2 also has it at $649.99. Retailer number 1 appears on page 1 of search results when you search for the significant keywords associated with this product. Retailer number 2 lands up in page 3. Both retailers are well-known retailers, so from a domain authority perspective, both of them are doing really well. Retailer number 1 has significant number of reviews on this product. Retailer number 2 hardly has any reviews. Now, if you look at the sales associated with this particular product across these two channels or these two retailers, for retailer number 1, it's one of the highest selling products for that particular retailer. They're making significant amount of money, and since it's a map control, price control product, they're making significant amount of margin dollars as well. For retailer number 2, it's not even in the top 20-25%. Now, if you look at this, it's a map price control, so you can't go below $649.99. Now, what levers do you have? Now, when retailer number 2 replaced that image, so you have on the left-hand side, you have strawberries, and on the right-hand side, you have kiwis. So you replace the image with a better-looking image. You do a bit of incentivization on getting reviews for this particular product. Not a generic incentive structure, but reviews associated with getting reviews for this particular product. You do a bit of search engine optimization. So retailer number 2 is now on page 1 of Google results as well. They've had a significant increase in sales in double digits associated with this particular product, and all at the same price point. No changes in price. Now, can this be applied at scale? Now, this is from work that we did at a retailer. So we looked at over 2,000 items. Right? Now, the blue line there that you see is the conversion. It's the daily, is the weekly conversion going up and down. The black line is the moving average of conversion. Now, as you can see, before the time that we did the content intervention, so So around the August timeframe is when we went in and made changes to specific products, not to all products, to specific products where the ROI of those content interventions were going to be significantly positive. And when you do that, you've seen the change in trend there. The conversion has gone up significantly, close to around 21 basis points, without any change in price. I repeat, without any change in price. Let's look at another example. Okay. Which one of these two products has a higher price elasticity? The one on the left is the Keen Newport H2. It's a very popular product for those of you. This comes in a category called fisherman sandals. It's a very popular product. It's got close to 2,000 plus reviews on Amazon, priced at $99, and its sales rank in Amazon in the shoes category is number 60. So the product is doing really well. The product on the right-hand side is a relatively less known brand. It's called the Pacific Trail Chassis. It's priced at $55. It's got just around 8 reviews, but good reviews. The sales rank is in the 10,000s. Now, what you'll notice is the difference in the cross-sell traffic. Now, what I mean by cross-sell traffic is the traffic that comes to this product page not looking for that particular product. The retailer is guiding a consumer to go to that particular product page, which means that you're probably using a buying guide, or you're using recommendations on another product page, or you're using a category page, or you're using some other vehicle of directing a consumer to that particular product. Right? So in essence, in a brick and mortar scenario, you're counseling the consumer as to what to get. And that indicates the cross-sell traffic. So the cross-sell traffic for the Keen product is just around 30%. For that one, is 60%. Now, which one do you think has the lower price elasticity? Now, the product on the right-hand side has significantly lower price elasticity compared to the one on the left. Now, very often in our work with retailers, we have found that the first answer to a problem in terms of merchandising or category performance is saying, okay, we need to match prices. Now, if I do match prices on the Pacific Trail Chassis, I'm leaving margin on the table. You've got traffic which is pretty loyal, which is coming to it from various sources. You're using buying guides to get the traffic there. There is no reason for you to be able to match competitor prices unless there is another variable that plays into account. So the point that I'm trying to make here is this, that content has a very important impact on price. It has the impact of reducing the price elasticity. And that impact is consistent across categories. The degree of impact on price elasticities can vary, but it still has a significant impact. Now, historically, if you look at retailers and you look at brick and mortar retailers, how do you calculate price elasticity? You look at historical prices, you look at historical sales, and you look at the sales change with respect to price and say, okay, here is my price elasticity. But now you have showrooming, which means that the drop in your sales is likely to be more linked to a competitor dropping their price than to your own price variations. Your price elasticity of a product is no longer constant throughout the year. It's likely to change through the year depending on external events that happen. So the lesson for us really is that when you look at price elasticity, especially in a showrooming scenario, it makes sense to look at other digital footprints that consumers are leaving behind. One example I talked about is the traffic source as to where the traffic is coming from. And obviously, you look at competitor prices as well. But a competitor price change cannot be the trigger for you to match prices. The trigger has to be other components which allow you to maximize the margin and take into account both content and price when you decide as to what's the value proposition that you're offering to your consumers. Now, if I put all of this together, right? So, this is how the conversion funnel for us works. So the first question that we're trying to answer is there demand for the product, right? And we talked about the demand signals in terms of reviews and searches and so on and so forth. Now, assuming there is a demand. So we talked about the Poo-Pourri product. So there is significant demand for the product. Now, are you getting a share of that demand? Does your assortment consist of stereo Bluetooth headsets? Are you getting a share of that traffic? Now, if you're not getting a share of that traffic, then regardless of what you do in pricing and content, it's not going to have a material impact on the overall margin dollars. So now, let's assume that you do take the action and then you add the appropriate products to the assortment, or you do the search engine optimization or the category page optimization in terms of getting the traffic. Then comes the next two levers, which is content and price. And as we talked about before, they kind of interplay with each other. Now, the pricing lever is a more expensive lever to apply, right? It impacts your overall margin. The content lever has an expense associated with it too, but the overall impact in terms of the margin dollars is significantly higher in case of content. But the idea here is that the content interventions cannot be applied for all products. You need to pick and choose. You need to pick and choose, and you need to go for the products where it makes the most ROI sense. Now, after I apply the content and the price lever is then I look at skimming prices or doing dynamic pricing, looking at price changes, what is happening in the market, has my conversion dropped, being able to react to real-time signals that the consumers are giving you to be able to make those price changes. Now, just to illustrate the first point, right? So very often we've been asked this question, saying, how do you predict demand for a particular product? So we did this study. We looked at several categories, and the idea here was to look at reviews, search signals, backlinks, social likes, etc., put them all into a statistical model, and see if we can predict the sales rank of products within a category. And surprise, surprise, we were able to predict it with around 60% accuracy with just publicly available data. So this is data that you don't need to buy. This is data that's freely available. We were able to get the sales rank down to around 60% accuracy. Now, keep in mind the accuracy does change depending on the categories, but this is an average across multiple categories. Now, pricing and content are obviously relative, right? It's not about who scores 100 in the class. It's about scoring better than the next best student. It's about scoring better than your competitors in terms of pricing and content, and having to play that intermix between the pricing and content so that the value proposition offered is accurate. Now, the trick there is to get to the real consumer need, right? So we have the consumer need or the expressed need here as the master craftsman set. Okay, and this is what Google threw up. Now, if you look at the real need, it's the Pupuri Master Craftsman set, which is available in several flavors. Flushinasta, Gone Flushing, North Poo Hilly. The real need also is that you can get the product in just under 2 hours. Now the results, right? So all of this is not, the results are real, right? So if you look at the interventions around the dimensions of assortment, content, and price, these are the kind of results that we have achieved at our clients. So a 7.5% increase in top line, a 21 basis point increase in conversion, 3.75% increase in dynamic pricing, and that's all I had for the session.
Thank you. If you look at the margins we're talking about here, some of our retailers here in the crowd also do what's called drop shipping, which is you take the order but it's fulfilled by a third party. How does that come into play if we're talking about different margins for content from different channels? But what if it's not on your site, either desktop or e-commerce? What about the kind of drop shipping equation of that? So how does that fit in the mix? Is my question.
Yeah. So the drop shipment plays a role in the cost part of the equation, right? Now, given there is a certain cost and there's a certain margin that you're making in the particular product, the idea here is that given those margins that you're making, what's the right combination of price and content to employ so that you maximize the margin for that particular category? Now, if you do manage to get your supply chain costs down by doing dropship or by other means, it's obviously additions to the margin. So the idea here is not to maximize on the margin for, You're taking cost as a constant. You're maximizing margin, taking into account both content and price, and seeing, okay, what's the equilibrium that I need to reach to.
Now, you showed a lot of data points up here, okay? My next question has to do with what does, if you want to recreate some of the metrics that you showed here, I can see the reports where that would come from, but in terms of where the data integration has to come from to begin with, especially if our visitors here today are from retail chains, what if they're still dealing with kind of siloed inventory? That maybe it's either a partial view of online inventory versus store inventory, but it's not quite there just yet. What do they have to do in terms of the complete data integration, or look at all the inventory to talk about the different types of content margin drivers you're mentioning here? The data integration question is my core question.
See, if you go back to this chart here, right? So as far as the retailer is concerned, he's trying to maximize the margin for that particular category, right? Now, if you're trying to maximize the margins, what you're trying to do is to make sure that you have products which are well received in the market. So you've got the current with the market. There's enough demand. Now, in order to be able to assess that, you really don't need data within the four walls. A lot of that data is freely available. You can get that. You need to then combine it with your own data in terms of what is your traffic, what is your inventory level, then to be able to make those decisions associated with price and content. So the first few questions, you don't really need data within the firewalls. But as you get into the detail, and as you rightly said, right, if I have to maximize the margin taking into account costs, yes, I do then need to look at inventory equations. I need to also look at where the inventory is best held and whether it makes sense for me to even have the product in a brick and mortar store to be able to maximize. For a lot of the cases, it may not even make sense. It may make sense to have the inventory in a centralized location because the typical stockout markdown costs in a store are around close to around 30%. So for some products, it may not even make sense to have the product in the store.
So we covered a lot of detailed ground in this presentation here. My final question would be this, just a little more maybe practicalum. What are two best practices you can recommend that our retailers today can take away with to kind of put this type of model into play?
See, what we've often found is in that most retailers, merchandising, site merchandising, buying, and pricing seem to be three separate silos with handoffs that happen, right? So you have the buying team which comes into play and decides on the assortment, saying, okay, this is the assortment that I'm going to carry for the season. That is then handed over to the site merchandising team saying, okay, set up the content for all of these items. And then when you get into in-season, then you have the pricing team which comes into play and say, okay, what's the pricing variation that needs to be made? What I see as opportunities there is to really stitch or look at that problem set across these three silos and to see if there are levers that can be employed which will help you optimize between the different levers. So for example, right, if you find that a product is doing well in the market, it's got significant traffic, but you're not getting conversion on the product, very often in season, it is too late to go back to the content team and say, okay, change the content on this particular product or change the search engine optimization on this particular product. People tend to look at content as a factory. It's like, push everything in and something comes out. We find that there's a significant ROI in terms of just looking at content for those products or assessing those products where the ROI return is going to be significant and just acting on them.
Please thanks it here.
Thank you.